After the Aloof boss, also an alpha, underwent a secondary differentiation into Enigma. Assistant Shen, you possess a delightful fragrance. Perplexed by his insinuation, I replied, it must be the scent of my shower gel. Assistant Shin, may I draw closer to inhale your aroma? I firmly asserted, that would not be appropriate. We, as executive assistants, maintain a professional distance. Assistant Shin, I find it exceedingly difficult to endure this. I beseech you to assist me that I remain silent. After our encounter, I chose to act as though nothing had transpired. Later, he restrained my hands behind my back, pinning me against the wall from behind. I pleaded, Mr. Sher, I was in error. He let out a cold scoff. If you have erred, then you must not attempt to escape again. 01. The pain is excruciating, a searing agony coursing through me. Someone has latched onto the gland at the nape of my neck, their fangs piercing my skin, inundating me with pheromones that relentlessly wash over every nerve in my body. It hurts. Please, stop. I cry out, my voice trembling as I feel myself quaking violently, my legs turning to jelly, and my body sliding downward uncontrollably. It is the man who has bitten my gland who holds me steady. Do not move, he commands, his voice laden with restraint, deep and hoarse. Shirzong, overwhelmed by the surge of pheromones. I am on the verge of tears. I feel so unwell. I am an alpha. How could my gland be so compromised? Is he attempting to mark me? How can he mark an alpha? The pain is unbearable. His pheromones are overwhelmingly potent, almost physically constricting me, leaving me utterly defenseless, forced to endure as physiological tears stream down my cheeks. The rich scent of mint intertwined with sandalwood invades my senses, deeply stimulating my olfactory perception. I gaze vacantly at the light above, my thoughts oscillating between clarity and chaos amidst the pain and insatiable heat. 02. This is the restroom of the airport. The man who has bitten my gland is my boss, Sher Joshuan. Half an hour ago, we were in the VIP lounge of the airport, awaiting our flight. Everything was tranquil until suddenly, a higher-ranking Omega within the enclosed VIP room went into an unexpected heat, their pheromones erupting uncontrollably, inciting a minor uproar. I am an alpha, and so is Sher Joshuan, yet I am merely a D-level, significantly more affected by the chaos. In that moment, I grasped Sher Joshuan's sleeve, trembling as I confessed, Shirzong, I do not feel well. He promptly placed a mask on me, one that could somewhat filter the pheromones, and donned one himself, stating, I will fetch you some suppressants. Amidst the turmoil, I managed to lock myself in a restroom stall. When Sher Joshuan returned with the suppressants and administered an injection, the heat within me remained unabated. It was peculiar, but I lacked the energy to ponder further. I told him, it seems ineffective, Shirzong. If you're not too affected, perhaps you should catch your flight. I'll call the hospital. Those with higher pheromone levels can control them more adeptly. Clearly, Sher Joshuan was in a much better state than I, his composure intact with just a suppressive patch and a filtering mask. It's all right. There's no rush to return, he replied. I'll stay with you. The pheromones of alphas repel one another. Sher Joshuan left me in the stall while he stepped to the sink to light a cigarette. I endured the heat ignited by the Omega-S pheromones until, in a moment, the sandalwood scent in the restroom intensified 1,000-fold, overwhelming the minty fragrance emanating from me to the point of being suffocating. Just then, Sher Joshuan burst through the stall door. Seeing the fire igniting in his usually placid eyes, I instinctively recoiled. Shirzong, I began. I apologize. It seems I am. He appeared tormented, unable to finish his sentence before he abruptly pulled me close, enveloping me in his embrace. His first action was to bury his nose in the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply several times. Then, with a degree of roughness, he yanked open the collar of my shirt, his thumb pressing harshly against the gland at my nape. As I trembled, he opened his mouth and latched onto my gland, his canines piercing through moments later. I had never experienced such a terrifying intensity of pheromones. Combined with the pain from my gland, tears involuntarily welled in my eyes. After pulling me from the stall, Sher Joshuan leaned against the sink, one arm encircling my waist while the other pressed against my head, rendering me utterly powerless, almost entirely leaning against him. Through the mirror in front of the sink, I caught sight of my suit jacket precariously hanging from my arm, my shirt pulled open to reveal nearly half my shoulder, while Sher Joshuan, my stoic boss, loomed over me, greedily drawing in my pheromones. It was all a bit too much. I dared not look any longer. Strangely, I felt no aversion to his alpha pheromones. Instead, I craved more, instinctively pressing closer to him. His lips left my gland and, without warning, he leaned in to kiss me. My eyes widened, my legs weakened to the point of collapse. But he caught me, turning me around and placing me atop the sink, continuing to kiss me fiercely. Sure Joshuan's pheromones surged once more, my senses spiraling into disarray as I vaguely heard footsteps approaching from outside. Who the hell is this? This is too overwhelming. Hurry, at this rate, the entire airport will descend into chaos. I felt myself drifting into unconsciousness amidst the suffocating sandalwood scent. 03. Upon awakening, I assumed I was in a hospital. However, the individual clad in a white coat and donning a specialized mask informed me that I was in a pheromone research facility. What is Sure Joshuan to you? He is my boss. The researcher said nonchalantly, I must inform you that your boss has differentiated into an Enigma, and you two will need to be isolated here for a period. Moreover, his pheromones permeated much of the airport, causing significant chaos and widespread flight delays. If you encounter news of this on any platform, do not be too surprised. I struggled to comprehend. I was dazed. I was shocked. An Enigma? Sure Zong has differentiated into an Enigma? Enigmas transcend ABO classifications, possessing extraordinarily potent pheromones capable of marking alphas, rendering them their exclusive omegas, the apex of the food chain. Yet, their numbers are exceedingly scarce. It is said that in the past decade, no more than 10 Enigmas have been documented in any city. Could it be that Sure Zong? So the suppressants were ineffective because of the influence of the pheromones from an Enigma on the verge of differentiation? I murmured. The researcher acknowledged the possibility and added, Mr. Sure is currently isolated. He is still in the process of differentiation, with pheromone levels that are both high and extremely unstable. Therefore, we need to seek your consent on a matter. I inquired, what matter? The researcher stated, since Mr. Sure temporarily marked you at the onset of his differentiation, you are now in a state analogous to an alpha susceptibility. If you are willing to accompany him through this period, it will help stabilize his pheromone levels more rapidly, allowing him to return to a normal life. I hesitated and asked, accompany him through this means? The researcher, with a matter-of-fact demeanor, replied, exactly as you envision. Oh, so it resembles the union of an omega and an alpha. What if I refuse? Unwilling? The researcher seemed taken aback by the question. Pausing briefly before responding, in that case we may have to resort to some coercive measures, as controlling an Enigma in a state of pheromone disruption is quite challenging. Coercive measures, you say? My fingers instinctively curled slightly as I replied, I'll think it over. 04. That night, I tossed and turned, reflecting on the matter, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was rather inappropriate. Time has always been a person who clearly distinguishes between public and private affairs, and being my direct superior, I could understand a sudden predicament, but assisting him through the differentiation phase would inevitably introduce an awkward intimacy into our interactions. Before falling asleep, I believed I had solidified my stance. The next day, when the researcher inquired if I had made a decision, I intended to decline outright, yet somehow, the words transformed on my lips. May I first see Mr. Sure? I truly should not have looked. Sure Joshuan was confined in a room in the isolation area on the top floor, and upon opening the heavy iron door, I was met with yet another barrier, reminiscent of a prison. Seeing him with a cumbersome metal bite inhibitor affixed to his face, his right hand shackled with a chain of moderate length, curled up on the bed in slumber, ignited my anger. How can you treat him like this? This was Sure Joshuan, the most radiant star in the technology industry, a genius praised by all, always poised and effortlessly adept at whatever he undertook. How could he be imprisoned like a criminal? We don't wish to resort to this either. The researcher shrugged, but an Enigma in the differentiation phase is quite dangerous. Their intense craving for pheromones can lead to heightened aggression. If it weren't for the sedatives keeping him asleep, you would likely witness him in a frenzy. I couldn't help but grasp the iron bars in front of me, and after a moment, I bit my lip and said, very well, I will accompany him through his differentiation phase. 05. In that isolation room, utterly cut off from the outside world, Sure Joshuan's Enigma differentiation ebbed and flowed like the tide, a process that persisted intermittently for 10 days. After 10 days, I was the first to leave, my glands a mess from biting and my body marked with traces, returning home to sleep for 3 days before I could muster any semblance of energy. Upon returning to the office, nearly everyone was aware that Sure Joshuan had undergone a second differentiation into an Enigma. This was not only due to the change in pheromones but also because, during the first year of Enigma differentiation, to prevent abnormal pheromone fluctuations from inciting chaos, they were required to wear bite inhibitors and potent suppressants in public until they could master their formidable pheromones. As for me, everyone only knew I had been isolated alongside Shi Jiaxuan for a while, with no further details. In the office, I encountered Shi Jiaxuan. Unlike the specially designed bite inhibitor from the Research Institute, the one for daily use by Enigmas, while still metallic, was considerably lighter in style, covering the lower half of Shi Jiaxuan's face, exuding a distinct aura of coolness. Consequently, his beautiful eyes appeared even more striking, and when he lifted his gaze towards me, I momentarily lost my composure, flashing back to the image of those eyes burning with desire. Assistant Shen, I apologize for what happened at the airport last time. His deep voice jolted me back to reality, and I quickly replied, It's all right, Mr. Shi. It was unexpected after all. Shi Jiaxuan asked, Are you well? Has your body been significantly affected? I'm fine, not much impact, I answered, diverting my gaze out of guilt. The truth was, the wounds on my glands still ached, and the bruises on my body had yet to fully fade. But I would never disclose this to him, for he had no idea I was the one who accompanied him through his differentiation phase. Before leaving the Research Institute, I learned from the researcher that during an Enigma's initial differentiation, the absolute control of pheromones over the body and consciousness often leaves them with a hazy memory of events that transpired, akin to a person's recollection of dreams upon waking, with some possibly retaining no memory at all. I just wanted to give you a heads up to avoid any misunderstandings. Rest assured, we will inform him about the differentiation phase, the researcher had said at the time. I had initially regretted my impulse to act on compassion, contemplating how to explain to Mr. Shi that my actions were devoid of personal sentiment. Upon learning he might remember nothing, a significant weight lifted from my heart, and I hastily inquired if the researcher could help keep it under wraps. Initially, the researcher disagreed, stating that if I and the Enigma could thus establish a long-term marking relationship, it would greatly benefit the stability of the Enigma's pheromones and minimize complications. Otherwise, he will have to regularly visit the Research Institute to extract pheromones that can easily accumulate in his body. No. I quickly waved my hands, even as my boss. This is where my assistance ends. Anything further would be quite inappropriate. How absurd to think of establishing a long-term marking relationship with Shi Jiaxuan. Wasn't that akin to becoming a bedmate for my boss? Agreeing to that would be madness. 06. During lunch break, while everyone in the office was resting, I slipped into the restroom to tend to the wounds on my glands. Thankfully, with my shirt and suit collar concealing them, and having deliberately cut a smaller piece of gauze, the wounds had gone unnoticed. Standing before the mirror, I loosened my tie, unbuttoned a few buttons, and gently peeled off the tape. Assistant Shin? The voice from behind startled my hand, causing me to tremble as I prepared to apply the ointment. Shi Jiaxuan strode towards me, swiftly pulling aside my collar, fully exposing the wounds at my glands to his gaze. What happened? His voice was heavy. Goodness, didn't he usually require a blaring alarm to wake from his afternoon nap? I was about to ask him the same. I managed a dry chuckle. Mr. Shi, were you not napping? Just woke up. A fleeting, unnatural expression crossed Shi Jiaxuan's face. This wound, is it from when I bit you at the airport? His voice lowered noticeably with the last few words. No, it isn't. I instinctively denied it, only to realize that such a wound would be difficult to attribute to any other source. Are you dating someone? Shi Jiaxuan suddenly mused. You seem to be quite a special omega. I became aware of his gaze lingering on my open collar, where the not yet faded love bites were clearly visible on my collarbone. Hastily, I pulled my collar together. No, I don't have time for a relationship. In this situation, it would have been far better to let him assume I had a partner, yet for reasons unbeknownst to me, I denied it without a second thought. It's just, an accident. Shi Jiaxuan's expression immediately shifted to one of understanding. It seems working for me has placed a considerable burden on Assistant Shen. I let out a nervous laugh. How could I respond to such a statement from my boss? But you must take care of your health, he said, moving to the nearby sink to wash his face after removing the bite inhibitor. Seeing me twist awkwardly to apply medicine to the wound on the back of my neck, he dried his hands and took the cotton swab from my grasp, saying, Let me do it. The swab, dampened with the cooling ointment, grazed over the still throbbing wound, causing me to involuntarily flinch. I'll be gentle, he assured, softening his approach, even leaning in slightly, drawing closer as he applied the medication while gently blowing on the wound. That was my gland, the most sensitive part of my entire being. The presence of Enigma's scent brushing against me made my hands, which were gripping the edge of the sink, tighten abruptly, and my breath quickened slightly. No. After forming a profound temporary bond with Enigma, I was reacting so easily to his proximity. I swiftly turned to him and declared, "That's enough. I can handle the rest myself." Sure, Joshuan appeared somewhat surprised by my exaggerated reaction, but soon his gaze drifted away as he picked up the bite inhibitor from the sink and put it back on. Apologies, I'm still not accustomed to being differentiated into Enigma. After he departed, I turned back to the mirror, only to realize why his gaze had wandered earlier. My ears and neck flushed with a deep crimson hue. I felt a wave of darkness wash over me. Maintain your distance. I must absolutely keep my distance from Sure Zong. Alas, it was futile. I could not keep my distance from Sure Joshuan. I craved his pheromones. I desperately needed his pheromones. The researcher on the phone expressed confusion. Did I not mention this to you? It is quite normal, you see. Enigma's pheromones are rather peculiar. Their temporary bond lasts significantly longer than that of an alpha. Furthermore, considering the depth of your bond, even after the scent fades, its effects will linger. As long as the temporary bond remains intact, you will require his pheromones for comfort. Ah, you never mentioned it. Not at all. It was entirely my fault for fearing that Sure Joshuan would awaken and leave too quickly, only asking for a rapidly dispersing scent medication and rushing off without hearing any precautions. It's not a big deal, the researcher reassured. 1. You can engage in intimate bonding with him, or 2. You can carry items that have been contaminated with his pheromones, such as clothing or blankets. Anything that is closely associated with him will suffice. Is this not a significant issue? It is quite the problem. Surely, I cannot resort to stealing the boss's personal belongings. Wouldn't that be rather perverse? I lay sprawled on the bed like a fish on the verge of dehydration. Is there no medication, no suppressants I could use? Unfortunately, not at the moment, dear, the researcher replied, sounding just like a customer service representative incapable of resolving any issues. Enigma has only recently emerged as a new gender due to a genetic mutation in the past few decades. We have yet to fully understand their differentiation mechanisms, and our research has not kept pace. Heaven help me. As fate would have it, Sure Joshuan was preparing to organize his wardrobe, needing to sort through a batch of old clothing. As his personal assistant, this task naturally fell to me. Throughout the years of working for him, I have never entertained any ulterior motives, nor have I ever taken even the slightest advantage. This time, however, I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt and shame as I secretly appropriated a few of his loungewear sets, leading to several nights plagued by nightmares. In my dreams, Sure Joshuan pinned me against the wall, lifting my chin with a smile that could only be described as devilishly charming. Do you desire my pheromones? Beg for them, and I shall grant you anything. I shook my head fervently, tears streaming down my face as I choked back sobs, trembling uncontrollably. Sure Zong, I'm sorry. I don't want them anymore. I beg you, do not fire me. With a mocking laugh, Sure Joshuan tore open my shirt. Little assistant, though you claim to refuse, your body seems quite honest. Accompanied by my screams and his sinister chuckles, I jolted awake, only to discover I was still wearing Sure Joshuan-esque clothing. I let out a distressed cry, covering my burning face, and hurried into the bathroom for a cold shower. Coincidentally, it seemed that Sure Joshuan had also been sleeping poorly lately. One day, he was scheduled to attend an industry summit in a neighboring city. As usual, I arrived early at his home to wake him, preparing breakfast and the suit he needed for the event. Noticing Sure Joshuan yawning repeatedly, I casually inquired while tying his tie, Sure Zong, have you not been resting well lately? Your dark circles are becoming quite pronounced. Just a bit, Sure Joshuan replied, half opening his eyes to gaze into the mirror. I've been having dreams lately, and my sleep has been restless. Nightmares? Not exactly. He suddenly lowered his gaze towards me. As I focused on tying his tie, my attention fixated on his neck, and I distinctly saw his Adam's apple bob up and down. An inexplicable tension enveloped me, prompting me to hasten my movements, pulling the tie tighter. To my surprise, my slight force caused him to lean closer. I instinctively stepped back, my back pressing against the mirror. Yet, he did not retreat. Instead, he leaned in with a hand braced beside me, tilting his head slightly to close the distance further. Assistant Shin, I've been meaning to ask, what fragrance do you wear? It smells delightful. Sure Joshuan's gaze turned somewhat dangerous. Were it not for the inhibitor, I might have suspected he intended to bite me. I don't wear any perfume. I feigned calmness, blinking. It must be my pheromones. Sure, Joshuan pondered for a moment. It seems a bit different. I can't quite articulate it. Perhaps it's the shower gel I use. If you like it, I could switch to something else next time. He took a couple of deep sniffs, but due to the inhibitor, he could not draw near enough. I professionally reminded him, Sure Zong, it's time to depart. He displayed rare signs of irritation, letting out a soft tch, make sure to switch it for me tomorrow. I blinked in surprise. What? The shower gel, he reiterated, emphasizing, the one you use. Throughout the day, Sure Joshuan's mood seemed rather low. Although he maintained a graceful demeanor while interacting with others, I noticed him discreetly tugging at his tie several times, only to retie it afterward. This was undoubtedly somewhat vexing. During our lunch break, we returned to the hotel to rest. The organizers had booked a suite for us, and upon entering, Sure Joshuan sank into the sofa, completely loosening his tie and tossing it aside. I poured him a glass of warm water and bent down to place it on the coffee table before rising. Suddenly, Sure Joshuan grasped my wrist. Assistant Shin, he said earnestly, looking directly at me, I have a request. I was perplexed. As his assistant, it was only natural for me to assist him. Why was he suddenly so formal? Of course, what would you like me to do? May I draw closer to inhale your scent? Sure Joshuan uttered those words with a deep, magnetic voice, devoid of any suggestive undertones, sending tumultuous waves through my heart. I endeavored to maintain a calm demeanor as Sure Joshuan elucidated. Ever since I transformed into Enigma, my sense of smell seems to have heightened significantly. The venue today is teeming with people, and the melange of pheromones is quite overwhelming, causing my nose considerable discomfort. However, Assistant Shin, your scent is rather pleasant, he added, a hint of confusion evident in his voice. Strangely, this revelation brought me a clearer understanding. In truth, my scent had not changed at all. The morning's mention of shower gel was entirely unfounded. What kind of shower gel fragrance could possibly mask pheromones? Sure Joshuan's sudden fondness for my scent was likely due to the temporary marking, though he himself remained unaware of this. It must be my minty aroma that is particularly refreshing. I offered a plausible explanation before declining. However, Director Sure, we are currently in EA, and it may not be appropriate. A tinge of disappointment colored Sure Joshuan's tone. Is it not permissible even with a bite inhibitor? I remained steadfast. That would not be advisable either. How about I procure a bottle of mint essential oil for you? Sure Joshuan pressed his temples and replied, Very well, let us consider this a desperate remedy. Regardless of the remedy, it was evident that he remained restless. By instinct, he trailed closely behind me throughout the afternoon. Even when I needed to visit the restroom, he would naturally suggest, Let us go together. His expression betrayed none of the intent to orbit around me. Yet the reality was undeniable. He was indeed revolving around me. A few days prior, Sure Joshuan had intended to visit a pheromone researcher to extract the accumulated pheromones from his body. However, due to pressing work commitments, he requested to postpone the appointment until after this business trip. Initially, I believed that a week's delay would be inconsequential, but it soon became apparent that one should never succumb to complacency. The researcher was correct. Without a long-term partner, Enigma indeed faces numerous challenges in various aspects. Unable to suppress my curiosity, I broached the subject with Sure Joshuan. He raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting I pursue a romantic relationship? I replied, It is not an inconceivable consideration. Sure Joshuan appeared somewhat displeased, concluding our conversation with, I am not interested in this matter for the time being. On the third day, the conference concluded successfully. The organizers had originally arranged for an outdoor buffet to facilitate relaxation and networking, but an unexpected downpour forced the cancellation of the event. Sure Joshuan, disliking social engagements, graciously declined several dinner invitations from executives and returned to the hotel suite with me. For reasons I could not fathom, I felt unusually fatigued and achy throughout the day. After sharing a simple meal ordered from the hotel, I retreated to my room for some rest. While showering, a sudden clap of thunder startled me. Following the resounding boom, the lights in my room abruptly extinguished, plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as I hastily donned my clothes, barely drying off as I stumbled out of my room. To my surprise, Sure Joshuan stood at the threshold, and we collided. Assistant Shin, are you alright? My intense fear of the pitch-black darkness was well known to him, having shared countless days together over the years. There was a past incident when we found ourselves trapped in a malfunctioning elevator, and in that claustrophobic darkness, I had curled into a corner, trembling uncontrollably. He had sat beside me, gently patting my back, alleviating the torment of that moment. This time was no different. Instead of pushing me away, Sir Joshuan enveloped me in his embrace. I clung tightly to the hem of his shirt, almost using his body as a fulcrum to follow him to the sofa. The hotel manager called to inform me that the circuit repairs would take some time, and I leaned helplessly against Sir Joshuan, each passing second stretching into an eternity. Assistant Shen, he suddenly called out in the darkness, his voice tense, "Are you in your sensitivity period?" I was taken aback, but the next moment, his query triggered a realization as I detected the intense, almost spicy scent of mint in the air. It dawned on me this was not merely a sensitivity period. The fatigue and weakness I felt were the symptoms of approaching estrus. I, an alpha, was experiencing the heat typically associated with an omega due to the temporary marking by Enigma. Overwhelmed, I disregarded my fear of the dark and immediately distanced myself from Sir Joshuan, rising from the sofa. Perhaps that is the case. I would be better off alone. My hurried steps were frantic and disordered. I stumbled over the coffee table and fell back onto the sofa. No, rather, I landed in Sir Joshuan's lap. He instinctively wrapped his arms around my waist, refusing to let me rise again. "What are you so flustered about?" It seemed that the sudden power outage had caught Sir Joshuan off guard as well, for he had neglected to wear a bite inhibitor. At that moment, his chin rested lightly on my shoulder, and without the barrier of the inhibitor, his lips were almost brushing against my gland, as if he swallowed hard. "Assistant Shin, are you deceiving me? How could an alpha's sensitivity period lead an Enigma to lose all reason?" In the following moment, I felt his thumb press firmly against my gland, sending a jolt of electricity through my body, rendering me utterly limp against him. "You have not visited the research institute to extract pheromones on time. Hence your pheromones are more prone to going out of control." I grasped at any rationale, attempting to steady my trembling voice. Is that truly the reason? The truth remained that our understanding of Enigma was far from comprehensive, and even if Sir Joshuan harbored doubts, he could not ascertain the underlying causes. Furthermore, I was not entirely incorrect. He was indeed experiencing a tide phase of pheromones. "This is truly troublesome," Sir Joshuan muttered under his breath. As he spoke, I felt his warm breath caress my gland, the rich scent of sandalwood compelling me to submit to him. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes as I uttered, "We should head to the research institute tomorrow. Tonight we can manage with some potent alpha inhibitors." Sir Joshuan expressed his dissatisfaction. "Is there truly no other option?" "None." My gland had likely swollen, allowing Sir Joshuan's fingers to grasp it. The pressure was gentle, but the sensation was overwhelming, prompting an involuntary gasp. "Assistant Shin, I find it unbearable. I implore you to assist me." I wanted to refuse, but my body betrayed me, rendering me speechless. Sir Joshuan, unable to wait for my response, gently turned my face toward him and captured my lips with his. In the darkness, my vision faded, yet all other senses were magnified. I could hear his intoxicating breaths and the soft rustle of our clothes brushing against one another. I felt his cool hand glide across my lower back, slithering down my spine like a serpent. At that moment, reason was a distant memory. I craved him, yearned for him, and found myself begging for him. He is Sir Joshuan, the favored son of heaven, and wherever he goes, he is eternally the center of everyone's attention. Had it not been for that unforeseen secondary differentiation, how could I have ever received his kiss, or made him lose his reason for me? Because this man is Sir Joshuan, I am destined to abandon all resistance. Just as I am fated to step into that isolated room and accompany him through the prolonged differentiation. I pushed Sir Joshuan away, and he likely thought I intended to leave, urgently pressing my waist. Yet, I merely shifted my position, straddling him with my legs apart. When our lips met once more, Sir Joshuan was evidently more ferocious. The base of my tongue was pressed painfully against his, and I felt both the urge to escape and the unwillingness to part with his fervor. Amidst the mingling of pheromones and our passionate kisses, I became utterly enraptured, to the point that when the lights flickered back on, it felt as though I had been abruptly awakened from a beautiful dream. Sir Joshuan, who had been engrossed in licking my gland and attempting to tug off my top, was also startled. He looked over, revealing a face of unparalleled beauty and a pair of eyes clouded with desire, crashing into my gaze. "We have a connection," he suddenly declared, lifting me effortlessly. "Let's head to the room." I quickly wrapped my legs around his waist. As I was pressed into the soft mattress, I closed my eyes, waiting for Sir Joshuan to lean down and kiss me anew. However, at that moment he unexpectedly asked, Assistant Shin, are you wearing my clothes? Cursed be my forgetfulness. I had completely overlooked it. These past few days, I could hardly sleep without wearing clothes infused with his pheromones. So after much deliberation while packing for the business trip, I had tossed 2 of his loungewear pieces into my suitcase. My thought was that even though we shared a hotel, the boss would never intrude into my room without reason, and merely wearing them to sleep should go unnoticed. Who would have anticipated such a power outage, leaving me flustered? In an instant, I felt the heat of blood rushing to my face. Good heavens, I had stolen my boss's clothes as sleepwear, and now I was caught red-handed. How much of a pervert must I appear in his eyes? I frantically pondered how to explain this behavior to render the existence of this sleepwear less peculiar. Yet, my mind seemed to falter, akin to a malfunctioning machine, gears spinning wildly yet achieving nothing. I merely needed your pheromones, I finally confessed, opting for half-truth over perversion. At the airport last time, since you bit my gland, I needed your pheromones. I closed my eyes in embarrassment. I'm sorry, President Sure. Sure Joshuan chuckled softly, his fingertip gently brushing the corner of my eye. What's there to cry about? Just tell me, would I not assist you? It dawned on me then that I had unwittingly shed tears of embarrassment. Biting my lip, I shook my head. We were merely superior and subordinate. How could I possibly make such an insinuative request of my boss? My dear Assistant Shin, Sure Joshuan sighed, leaning down to kiss me, you are far too adept at concealment, leading me to think I am. The last 2 words were swallowed by the kiss, leaving me unclear. Yet, I lacked the energy to delve deeper. In mere moments, I found myself devoid of shame and resolve amidst the explosive pheromones of Enigma, my body melting into a puddle. Just as I was on the brink of losing control, Sure Joshuan suddenly halted, regarding me with the demeanor of a master surveying a slave, and asked from his elevated position, Assistant Shin, do you like my sleepwear? I bit my lip fiercely, remaining silent. Sure Joshuan prodded. I barely managed to whisper, yes. What else do you like? In embarrassment, I turned my head away, but he grasped my chin, forcefully turning my face back toward him. Tell me, Assistant Shin, what else do you like? I like your pheromones. His presence was overwhelming, tormenting me in other ways, and I could only respond in a teary voice. I like your pheromones. And what else? I like your eyes, your mouth, your hands, everything about you. My president, you could never fathom how I revere you. I found myself at a loss for words, each utterance feeling akin to shedding a layer of clothing before him, my sense of shame reaching its zenith. Good. All my pheromones, I bestow upon you. Sure Joshuan rewarded me with a kiss, a continuous flow of pheromones. I transitioned from parched to satiated. Every cell within my body, every drop of blood, seemed to blend with his essence. Perhaps it was fortunate that he did not lose his composure to mark me again, for I could bear no more. I was self-aware. Regardless of what transpired between Sure Joshuan and me, in the end, I would revert to my position as an assistant. After all, it was all the doing of pheromones. The next day, I deliberately rose earlier than Sure Joshuan, returning to my room to tidy everything up before proceeding, as usual, to his room, drawing back the curtains and calling him to wake, reminding him of our flight time. Seeing me in formal attire, Sure Joshuan asked hoarsely, why not sleep a little longer? I replied, work must be done, President Sure. Sure Joshuan paused. Last night. Last night was merely an accident. I understand, President Sure, and I will treat it as if it never happened. Sure Joshuan furrowed his brow, and after a moment, he sneered, Shun Hanjong, you seem to have many accidents. Took me a while to realize that his remark carried a hint of sarcasm. Previously, when I had tended to my wound in the company restroom, I had also told him it was an accident. I chose not to respond. How many omegas have you slept with? Sure Joshuan suddenly inquired. I pressed my lips together. I don't know. Then that means many. Not really. In truth, I had never engaged in one-night stands. Were you ever the one on the bottom? No. What was that like? I hesitated, unsure of how to respond, then told him, President Sure, we have an early flight today, we shouldn't delay. Sure Joshuan possessed a hidden tendency to wake up grumpy. At that moment, he clearly appeared to be exceedingly displeased, throwing off the covers with great force and storming into the bathroom. I began to help him pack. While checking and organizing the desk, I accidentally knocked his pen to the floor. The pen rolled away, uncapped, and disappeared beneath the bed. With no other option, I removed my jacket, carelessly tucked my tie into my collar, and knelt on the floor, stretching my arm to reach. Suddenly, I felt what seemed like a gentle kick to my backside. Turning to look, I found Sir Joshuan, freshly showered, standing behind me, his hair slightly damp, beads of water clinging to his eyebrows and lashes, his expression neutral as he gazed down at me. I suspected it was merely my imagination and hesitantly asked, "President Sher, is something wrong?" At this moment, Sir Joshuan lifted one of his feet, his toes gliding down my hips, tracing a delicate arc with a gentle and languid motion. It was not an illusion. My face instantly flushed crimson. "Assistant Shin, you indeed possess the charm of a seducer," he remarked casually before turning to depart. The boss seemed to be angry, yet perhaps not entirely so. I was uncertain. Ever since I had applied to become his assistant, aside from the initial period of unfamiliarity, it had been quite a while since I felt such a sensation. Sir Joshuan had employed 5 assistants in total, 2 of whom were dismissed during their probationary periods, while another 2 did not last a year. Only I had remained by his side for nearly 5 years. A few colleagues with whom I had a good rapport once confided that many had wagered I would not last long in the role, reasoning that I appeared too delicate to withstand the pressures. Indeed, at that time, I had just graduated from university, a blank slate, compounded by Sir Joshuan's well-known high standards for work. It was natural for others to think I, a mere novice, would not endure, yet I had persevered. In fact, it later became a running joke that even Sir Joshuan himself remarked, "Assistant Shin, you understand me better than I do." Everyone jested that I was the fated one for sure, but I knew that this understanding was merely a reflection of meticulous observation and patient documentation. In the early days of my employment, my phone notes were filled with observations about Sir Joshuan, encompassing his habits in both life and work. I had never anticipated that one day, when faced with him, I would suddenly feel that familiar sense of anxiety and confusion. Moreover, for a time afterward, this feeling lingered. In the realm of work, Sir Joshuan was an epitome of rigor and responsibility, a trait that had not changed. However, outside of work, perhaps it was merely my perception, but his demeanor towards me seemed to have grown somewhat distant. Previously, during our leisure moments, we would engage in aimless conversations unrelated to work. Now, his indifference rendered me hesitant to speak freely, allowing the atmosphere to drift toward an awkward abyss. That day, Sir Joshuan exhibited signs of agitation from the morning, even daydreaming during the morning meeting, an unusual occurrence. Several times, when I entered his office to deliver coffee or documents, I caught him frowning, scrutinizing me with a gaze that seemed to want to convey something. Recalling his earlier comment about having a keen sense of smell, I cautiously inquired during the afternoon break, "Sure, is it that the scents left by people coming and going are too overwhelming? Would you like me to arrange for an air purification system to be installed on this floor?" He was reclining in his office chair, eyes closed, and responded with a soft Upon receiving his affirmation, I was about to leave the office when he suddenly opened his eyes, wearing an expression of barely contained frustration, and asked, "Assistant Shin, just how late did you stay out last night?" I assumed he had noticed my incessant yawning and hastily apologized. "I'm sorry, sure. I will be more mindful in the future." It was clear that admitting fault was the best course of action, as offering excuses would be futile. To my surprise, this only seemed to infuriate Sir Joshuan further. "Do you really need to vent that badly, even on a workday?" I then realized he had misinterpreted my late-night activities. "Do you have any idea how ill-fitting your clothes are? Are you hoping everyone knows you didn't come home last night?" I was taken aback. This was entirely not what he assumed. Last night, my good friend had experienced a breakup and invited me over to console him with drinks. We both ended up thoroughly intoxicated. Upon waking this morning, I discovered my clothes were in such disarray that they were unsuitable for work. In a rush to get to the office, I had to borrow one of his suits. My friend, being a beta, was not as tall or robust as I, an alpha, so his attire indeed felt a tad constricted on me. However, unless scrutinized closely, it was not particularly noticeable. Apart from Sir Joshuan, no one else had commented on my outfit. Still, as the saying goes, when the boss is upset, admitting fault is the best approach. "I apologize. I will ensure that my personal matters do not interfere with my work in the future." I lowered my head, sincerely apologizing once again. This time, Sir Joshuan refrained from escalating the situation, simply stating coldly, "Assistant Shin, I hope you can be more responsible in your work. No, in all aspects of your life. Really? You actually intend to let him go? What's there to be reluctant about? We can just hire another assistant." Within Sir Joshuan's office, Vice President Lee and Shi seemed to be engaged in idle chatter. Clutching a file, I stood outside the slightly ajar office door, and upon hearing Shi Joshuan mention hiring another assistant, my mind buzzed, retracting my hand that was poised to knock. Vice President Lee chuckled, "With your high standards, it's unlikely anyone will meet your expectations again. Is it?" Shi Joshuan replied coolly, "We can try several candidates. There will surely be someone competent." TSK. Vice President Lee remarked, "As for that little Shin, setting aside work capability, just his looks are pleasing enough to have around. It will be rather regrettable not to see him in the office anymore. Would you care to repeat that?" Shi Joshuan's tone had clearly grown colder. Vice President Lee laughed heartily. "I have no interest in alphas. I merely appreciate aesthetics." Shin, phone call. At that moment, the phone on my desk rang, and a colleague passing by reminded me, prompting me to quickly turn and leave. Throughout the day, I pondered what I had done wrong. After much contemplation, I concluded that it could only be one reason. As I had mentioned, Shi Joshuan was remarkably clear-cut in distinguishing between personal and professional boundaries. Engaging in a relationship with his assistant, whether due to pheromones or other factors, was something he would likely not tolerate, given his character. Reflecting on it closely, I realized his attitude towards me had indeed begun to subtly shift after that power outage night. The delay in his decision was probably due to the bond we had formed over the years. Very well. If that were the case, I could only accept it. After all, the root of the matter lay with me. Had it not been for my impulsive decision to assist my boss in navigating his second differentiation, those pheromone-related mishaps would never have occurred. I had crossed a line without his consent. The consequences of crossing that line were mine to bear. But it was all right. It was merely a job. With my skills and experience, finding a better position wouldn't be a challenge. Over the years, there had been no shortage of people wanting to recruit me. It was merely my affection for my first post-college job that had held me back. Yet, one must always strive for greater heights, right? Perhaps this was an opportunity from the heavens, allowing me to embark on a new journey after a brief respite. It was all right, I reassured myself. It was not a significant matter, and I would not be unemployed. I comforted myself as I downed yet another drink that evening. Shi Joshuan, you scoundrel. Pulling up your pants and denying me. Accursed capitalists. To dismiss me so easily. What a distortion of humanity and a degradation of morals. I have not committed any significant errors at work. The compensation for N1 must not be a single cent less. Moreover, I have yet to take a single day of annual leave despite working for you all these years. Am I not the one who is at a disadvantage here? No, I must reclaim this leave. The next morning, I messaged Shi Joshuan, explaining that I had urgent matters at home and hoped he could grant me an extended leave. With the new year approaching, I applied for leave that would extend into the following year. Shi Joshuan expressed concern, and I mentioned it was a personal matter, not convenient to disclose. After a considerable pause, he replied, "All right, just inform HR, and we can handle the leave request later." At least he still possesses some basic decency. The reason for my leave was fabricated, but the truth is, I did return home. After all, I needed to go back for the new year, and having time off would allow me to spend more moments with my parents. On the first day, my parents welcomed me with enthusiasm. By the third day, they were criticizing me for waking up too late and being too inactive. By the fifth day, they began orchestrating blind dates. What a smooth little scheme. I found myself engaging in a verbal sparring match with them while simultaneously updating my resume on my computer. After uploading my resume to job recruitment websites and concealing my current company, I nonchalantly changed my job-seeking status to unemployed. Year-end is certainly not the peak hiring season, and I did not anticipate a seamless transition into a new job. I was merely browsing. To my surprise, within 3 days of uploading my resume, I received several calls from headhunters inquiring if I had already left my job, my desired position, and salary expectations. One senior, with whom I had a decent rapport, even directly messaged me on WeChat to ask if I was interested in joining his company. In fact, a year ago, when he had just returned to start his own venture, he had reached out to me. But at that time, I had no intention of changing jobs, and the matter had thus faded into obscurity. This time, somehow, he learned that I was job hunting and revisited the topic, making a special phone call to introduce me to his company's situation. After hanging up, it was already quite late, and I had not given the matter much thought, intending to go to bed when Shi Joshuan's call came through. I was quite surprised to answer, asking, "Mr. Shi, is there something you need?" His voice was heavy, resonating through the phone and striking my eardrums. "Who were you on the phone with for so long tonight?" I vaguely replied, a friend. What kind of friend? He probed. I answered, just a friend. Is it a boyfriend or a girlfriend? He insisted. I replied, neither. Then what sort of friend is it? He pressed further. I stated, just a friend. Sure, Joshuan chuckled in exasperation and asked, you'll be home tomorrow, right? I responded with a simple He then said, I'll come by to see you tomorrow. I abruptly sat up in bed. What do you want to see me for? Just passing by to check on you. He replied. I couldn't shake the feeling that his words were laced with a hint of irritation. The next day, Sure Joshuan indeed made a cross-city appearance. Driving to my home, I hurried downstairs to meet him, only to find him retrieving several high-end gift boxes from his trunk, stating he wanted to visit my parents. I was genuinely puzzled. I senti that unnecessary, Mr. Sure? If my boss comes to the door, my parents will think I've caused a major incident at work. Then just don't mention that I'm your boss, he retorted, and proceeded to knock on my front door with the gifts in hand. My parents, who were somewhat oblivious to social cues, appeared slightly flustered in the presence of the imposing figure of Enigma. Sure Joshuan did not reveal his status as my boss, and I refrained from mentioning it, simply introducing him as a friend who happened to be passing through. My mother, however, was skeptical and leaned in to whisper, This isn't your boyfriend, is it? You haven't tea. You know. I ignored the latter question and answered the former, no it's not. My mother sighed in relief, that's good. I've invited Xiao over for dinner tonight. Mom! I exclaimed in frustration. I've told you there's nothing between us. Why would you invite him? Xiao was my longtime crush from high school, Lin Jila, an A-grade Omega, with fair skin and a striking figure. In my naive youth, a mere smile from him would light up my entire day. I had always believed I had concealed my infatuation well until one day after college. My mother casually mentioned that the teachers had noticed my feelings and had even contacted his parents to keep an eye on my romantic inclinations. However, my mother, believing my academics were solid enough, did not take it too seriously and never brought it up with me. Recently, she had met Lin Jila's mother at a matchmaking corner in the park, and since both of us had remained single for years, they decided to play matchmakers for our long-lost, unfulfilled romance. I said, Mom, that was ages ago. There's nothing left of that unrequited love. My mother dismissed my concerns, arguing you liked him back then, so surely you can appreciate him now. Besides, Xiao has improved significantly since high school. He's practically a city flower now. What could you possibly find fault with? She added, his mother mentioned he still remembers you and is quite eager to reconnect. What's the point of inviting him over? You're so lazy. I'll create the opportunity for you myself, she retorted, casting a glance at Sure Joshuan, before shifting the blame back to me. Why didn't you mention that you had a friend coming over? Now the two are bound to run into each other. I thought to myself, how was I to know that my boss felt the need to pay a visit to my family? I was caught completely off guard. Lin Jila arrived punctually. At the dinner table, my parents were busily engaged, urging Sure Joshuan to eat more while instructing Lin Jila to make himself at home, all while subtly steering the conversation towards their matchmaking agenda, reminiscing about high school days. Xiao, you and Hanzhong were quite close in high school, weren't you? My mother suddenly recalled, exclaiming, the teachers thought you two were dating. Haha, I thought, that's not at all what they said. Really? Lin Jila widened his eyes, appearing somewhat flustered as he added, well, we were pretty good friends. I remember we would often meet on the bus to school, and he would bring me breakfast. Hanzhong, do you remember? I felt Sure Joshuan's gaze suddenly fixate on me. Haha, I managed a nervous chuckle, longing to claim I didn't recall, but felt it inappropriate to embarrass him publicly, so I muttered, I suppose we took the same route. How could that be? My mother interjected, revealing my clumsiness. Our homes are in completely different directions. You must have intentionally taken that bus. My mother's comments about my youthful antics made me feel mortified, and I discreetly kicked her leg under the table, signaling her to cease her tangential remarks. As a result, Sure Joshuan turned his head to glance at me, inquiring, what is the matter? I merely responded with a non-committal gesture. In any case, the meal was indeed an excruciating experience. After dining, my mother subtly suggested that I escort Lin Jila back home. I understood that a single concession would inevitably lead to further compromises. After a prolonged silent struggle with her, Sure Joshuan finally rose, politely stating, it's getting late. I shall not intrude upon uncle and aunt any longer. I will visit again when I have the opportunity. Upon hearing this, Lin Jila also stood to bid farewell. My mother nudged me forward, saying, "Hanjong, see them off." At once, Shi Jiaxuan turned to me. "Shall we go together? I can drive you both." How unfortunate. I found myself in a position where my boss was playing the role of my chauffeur. On the way to drop Lin Jila home, we sat side by side in the back seat, engaging in light conversation. Occasionally, Shi Jiaxuan would glance at me through the rearview mirror, and without exception, our eyes would meet, revealing his mood was less than cheerful. "Hanjong, a few high school classmates are heading to a bar. Would you like to join?" Lin Jila suddenly inquired, putting down his phone. After a moment of contemplation, I realized that it had been years since I had seen some of my classmates, so I did not decline, replying, "Let's go see them." Shi Jiaxuan interjected, "How do we get to the bar?" I hesitated to trouble him further, saying, "Mr. Shi, perhaps you should return to the hotel. We can take a cab ourselves." "It's no bother," he replied. "I have nothing pressing today. Just tell me the directions." With Lin Jila present, I did not wish to engage him too much, so I leaned forward, took his phone, and opened the navigation app for him. After we disembarked, Lin Jila asked, "Is he really your boss?" I had mentioned it during our earlier casual chat, so I nodded and affirmed, yes. Lin Jila appeared somewhat incredulous. "You can casually handle your boss's phone?" I was momentarily taken aback. Was that truly so strange? Shi Jiaxuan's phone often rested beside me. When he was busy, I frequently answered calls on his behalf. He seemed to have no qualms about it. I shrugged and smiled at him. Perhaps to my boss, a phone is merely a tool for work, much like I am just a tool for him. After an extended absence from the bar scene, I found my spirits elevated after downing several shots with classmates I had not seen in years. Everyone engaged in dice games and rock, paper, scissors, and I eagerly participated. Soon, I began to feel a bit lightheaded. Lin Jila watched me with concern, waving his hand in front of my face and asking, "Shin Hanjong, are you all right?" I pressed his hand down, reassuring him, "I'm fine, really." At that moment, someone approached us and, noticing my hand resting on Lin Jila's, teased, "Are you two in a relationship?" I quickly withdrew my hand, but before I knew it, the crowd erupted in playful jeers, with someone exclaiming, "I could tell back in high school that Shin Hanjong liked Lin Jila. Wow, so are these two destined to be together? This makes the third couple in our class. What kind of luck is this? Haha, you might want to ask our old teacher if he has been playing matchmaker." Lin Jila's face flushed as he protested, "Stop joking. We're not. Then why not take advantage of today? Get together, get together." Fueled by alcohol, everyone began to cheer boisterously. "Kiss, kiss, get together, kiss." Amidst the vibrant colors of the bar and the cacophony of voices, Lin Jila looked at me with anticipation. "Hanjong?" He uttered my name with his full, luscious lips, and I could almost detect the sweet scent that belonged to an omega. My mind became a haze as I stared at him, and he slowly leaned in, eyes closed. Just as I was coming to grips with the moment, someone unexpectedly yanked me from behind, causing me to pivot and collide my lips against a cold, unyielding surface. The rich scent of sandalwood overwhelmed me, nearly rendering me weak. Shi Jiaxuan suddenly appeared, tightening his grip around my waist in full view of the crowd. "Why didn't you move away? Do you truly wish to drive me mad?" I gazed at the striking, cold features above me, swallowing hard, and found myself inexplicably drawn closer. Shi Jiaxuan pressed my head against his shoulder. "Apologies, he is intoxicated. I'll take him home now." In the corridor adjacent to the bar, feeling the heat from the alcohol coursing through me, I pushed Shi Jiaxuan against the wall, hastily pulling off his restraint and impatiently kissing him. "Shin Hanjong." Shi Jiaxuan grasped my chin, pulling me back. I stared at him in confusion, licking my lips. His gaze darkened, and he suddenly shifted our positions, pinning my hands behind me. My arms ached slightly, prompting me to struggle and softly murmur, "It hurts." "Good. It should hurt," Shi Jiaxuan replied coldly. "You ought to feel pain." I felt a twinge of grievance at his words, but there was also a flicker of excitement, particularly as I sensed his pheromones enveloping me. "Mr. Shi, I was wrong." I heard my voice come out soft and pliable. "What happens when you're wrong?" "If I'm wrong, I should apologize." "Incorrect." Shi Jiaxuan tightened his grip on my hands further. "Tell me, what do you do when you're wrong?" "If I'm wrong." My thoughts completely stalled. "I don't know." Shi Jiaxuan let out a cold snort, leaning closer to whisper in my ear, "If you're wrong, you're not allowed to escape." I awoke in an unfamiliar hotel room, alone, yet the sound of running water from the bathroom indicated someone was bathing Shi Jiaxuan. Perhaps. I sat up, rubbing my temples, feeling soreness throughout my body. I had imbibed far too much the previous night, my emotions spiraling out of control. Sure, Joshuan had certainly put me through my paces. I had even ended up crying on his shoulder. You bastard, Sure Joshuan, you have no heart. You bit my gland so hard. It hurts, it really hurts. Look at all your bite marks. You've made it so that I can only sleep in your clothes. I feel like a pervert, and you say I'm promiscuous. Where have I been promiscuous? I'm diligent and conscientious, utterly devoted to you. I barely have time for anything else, let alone one-night stands. And yet you still want to fire me, tossing me aside after using me. I might find work easily, but you shouldn't be so heartless, Sure Zome. I'm your best assistant. After all, the effects of alcohol had truly led me astray. I had said everything I shouldn't have, and I could no longer hide the truth about my estrus phase. Damn it, should I slip away while he is still in the shower? With a spontaneous resolve, I swiftly threw off the covers and leaped out of bed, my movements frantic as I hastily donned my clothes. In my eagerness, I struck my toe forcefully against the corner of the bed, an agonizing pain erupting that brought tears to my eyes. Shin Hanjong. Just then, Sure Joshuan appeared, enveloped in a mist of steam, his voice laced with irritation. However, upon seeing me seated on the floor, tearful and distressed, he rushed over and crouched down before me. You're bleeding. He gently grasped my foot with his damp hand, a mixture of concern and anger in his tone. Were you so desperate to leave? I instinctively curled my toes. I'll go fetch some medicine and band-aids. Stay put, and don't move. 15 minutes later, he returned to the room, breathless, while I was still on the phone with my mother. She was in a fury, interrogating me about what I had done to Lin Jila, claiming he had returned home in tears and demanding I apologize. She also inquired about my absence the previous night, culminating in a damning conclusion. I knew you weren't being straightforward with that Enigma. After all the effort you put into becoming an alpha, how could you still play the submissive role? Are you trying to drive me to despair? Forget it. If you're serious about him, invite him over for a proper meal sometime. It wouldn't do to leave him feeling so repressed, Sure Joshuan said as he settled beside me, taking my ankle and resting my calf on his thigh. Embarrassed, I attempted to retract my foot. I can manage on my own. Stay still. He gently pressed my foot into place while meticulously cleaning the dried blood from beneath my toenail with hydrogen peroxide, all the while asking, what did your mother say? Nothing much, I replied. I heard her. She wants you to bring me home for dinner. I hesitated, then said she misunderstood. I will clarify things with her. What misunderstanding? Sure Joshuan applied the band-aid yet did not release my foot. Shinhanjong, are you planning to abandon me once more? What? My eyes widened in disbelief. Who would abandon you? Sure Joshuan replied. Last time you said you wanted to act as if nothing had happened, and now you want to flee after sleeping together. Isn't that abandonment? I nearly gasped. Wasn't I just worried about you being with your assistant? I couldn't bear the thought. I can bear it, he quickly countered, looking intently at me. Why wouldn't I be able to be with someone I like? I was taken aback. What did you just say? I can bear it. The second part. Sure Joshuan smiled. I like you. My heart raced wildly, and I turned my head away. Flustered. Didn't you already know? It's because I accompanied you through your transformation period, and we formed a temporary bond, which makes you more susceptible to my pheromones. It'll pass after some time. You need to be more open-minded. So you don't like me? His single question turned my lengthy explanation against me. I could not bring myself to say, I do not like you. I lowered my gaze. Do you still prefer omegas? If that's the case, I won't trouble you any longer. When you marry, I, as your boss, might even be able to offer a generous gift. Sure Joshuan released my foot and stepped into the bathroom to wash his hands. I sat in a daze, ultimately unable to contain the surging emotions within me, and dashed into the bathroom, wrapping my arms around him from behind. I like you. Sure Joshuan, I like you. As for the dismissal, well, that was a colossal misunderstanding. Sure Joshuan felt quite wronged. He explained that he merely intended to transfer me to the branch office. Though I would hate to part with you, given your capabilities, you can't possibly remain my assistant forever. I wanted to send you to the branch for 2 years of training so that when you return to headquarters, you could assume a more significant role. But before I could discuss it with you, you fled. Subsequently, several people called to ask if you had really resigned. Shun Hanjong, you nearly caused me to lose both a boyfriend and a valuable employee. Double kill. Eventually, I transitioned to work at the branch office. Though the branch and headquarters were in different cities, the distance wasn't too great. However, My work kept me exceedingly busy, leaving little time for us to meet. On one occasion, Sir Joshua personally came to the branch for a meeting. After I presented my quarterly work summary, he expressed his satisfaction and, after office hours, conducted a private commendation in my office. He pushed me down onto the desk, his shirt and tie impeccably neat, while I became a disheveled mess beneath him. Has General Manager Shin reflected on her recent attitude towards her boss? He donned a cold bite guard, his tone equally frosty, though his body radiated heat. I yearned to remove the guard and kiss him, but he restrained my hands. Have you reflected yet? I felt indignant, breaking free from his grasp and pushing him back into the office chair. Sir Joshuan raised an eyebrow. Is General Manager Shin planning a rebellion? I pulled the loosely hanging tie from around my neck and slowly bound his hands together. It's everyone's duty to resist oppression by the boss. Now, it was I who would not permit him to remove the bite guard. He leaned his head against my neck, desiring to bite my gland, yet the guard thwarted his efforts, leaving him gasping for breath. I grasped his hair from behind, forcing him to look up at me. His eyes were strikingly red, sweat dampening his long eyelashes, a vein protruding on his forehead, exuding an enticing allure. I languidly asked, "Sure, have you reflected on your attitude towards your employees?" His eyes narrowed slightly, followed by a low, rumbling laugh. Let me ponder that some more. Fin. The end. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.